So today we are talking about feelings and how they arise in the subtle body and then affect our physical body. So the most interesting of these feelings is the emotions. Emotions are fascinating, but what happens is people aren't really taught to deal with emotions. It's very, very strange, at least in this culture. People are taught to, kind of shuttle them into certain categories. Like men are taught the only emotion that you're allowed to feel is anger. So whatever emotion arises, it all has to shuttle into anger. And women, really, if I'm honest, and I look at my own conditioning, the emotions that we experience or how we are trained to deal with our emotions is to channel them into fear. Fear or sorrow, sadness. And it's ridiculous because it's such a limited thing. Even with the women's conditioning, even when we're happy, it's like you're supposed to be a little sad too. Or you're supposed to be a little afraid because you can't be too happy. And then with men, it's the same thing. If you're really happy, it's like, oh wait, I need to be, that's not manly. I have to bring some anger into it. It's really ridiculous. So this does a number on your subtle body, because instead of allowing these emotions to just arise and pass away, now we're channeling them into a certain form then you're not really taught how to deal with. And then it starts to solidify and it hardens and becomes part of your energetic and physical makeup. So what we do on the path is we bring a sense of compassion to every sensation, every feeling, every emotion that arises. Now, what is compassion? I have to define that word a little bit. And what compassion ultimately means is the sincere wish for the liberation of all beings. We want everyone to recognize their Buddha nature, starting with ourselves, including ourselves. And then so we can look at, well, what does that mean? That means to be free, to experience equanimity. So as these different emotions arise, and when we say feelings, it's not limited to just emotions. I'm just using that as a prime example because it's more tangible. But really any sensation that arises, we have the sensations of the body. We have the subtle feelings. Are planning a trip and every time you think about it, you get a certain feeling. That's another type of feeling, that type of sensation. It's all being received by our subtle body. But what we do, or what most people do, because they have not trained their mind, is the emotion or the sensation or whatever type of feeling arises, and then they immediately create thoughts about it, and then those thoughts turn into a story. And say, oh, well, I'm having this feeling of anxiety because I don't know what's going to happen on this trip, and because of the state of the world, and now I've got this whole story about how I need to control the world. which we realize that we can't do, which only creates more anxiety, and then we get, stuck in a loop. Just as one example. So as far as practice, what we want to do is pay attention to every feeling that arises and allow it to fall away. And we do this by holding the space of compassion that we wish for ourselves and all beings to be free. So that doesn't mean that we want to put people in a little bubble and protect them. That's not free. That's being in a little bubble, numb. And then that creates a sense of apathy and disassociation. What we actually want is to be completely open and allow all of these different feelings, these different sensations, different emotions to arise. We acknowledge their presence, and we don't cling to them, and we don't push them away. There's an author, I believe her name is Jill Bolt Taylor, and she did a TED Talk called My Stroke of Insight. I think there's also a book by the same name. But she was a neuroscientist who had a stroke, and she was very aware of the whole process, and because she was a neuroscientist, she knew exactly what was happening to her brain as it was happening. So a very interesting thing. And then the stroke took a lot of her memories. And so when she would meet somebody, like her mom, she didn't have any positive or negative associations. And the mom would do something that she'd probably done 1,000 times that would be upsetting to Jill. And instead of immediately launching into a story, because she had this gap and everything was fresh and new, she would notice that, this annoyance is arising in my mind. And then because she's a neuroscientist, she's like, let me see what happens. And so she watched the chemical processes all start triggering in her body. And she figured out that it takes 90 seconds for the chemical reaction that is triggered by an emotion to subside. So when there's sudden fear, like I was on the freeway yesterday, and I was changing lanes, and the car 2 lanes over decided they were going to change lanes at the same time, and so I had to swerve. And then there's that moment of fear and the adrenaline. And because I did not try to push it away or cling to it, it was gone within 90 seconds. It was just like, and then, now it's gone. Whereas if you're not paying attention, what can happen is you get caught up in that fear, that adrenaline, all those chemicals start going, and now the mind wants to make sense of the feelings of the heart pumping and the sweating and the fear. So it concocts an entire story, which of course we are always the hero. We are always in the right? It's like, how dare that woman do that? And then this perpetuates the cycle, so this train of thought can then trigger another emotion, which then sets off another cascade of chemical reactions. So now you're into another 90 seconds. And then that triggers another one, and another one, and another one. So people can stay stuck in this cycle for literally years. Like, they're just caught in anger, caught in anxiety, caught in sorrow. Because the story starts feeding the emotions trigger the chemical reaction triggers more thoughts, which triggers another story, which triggers another thing. And then all of this is being supported energetically as well. So it's not enough to just yell at yourself and say, stop thinking that. Because you still got this energy, this non-physical vibration happening in your being that also needs to subside. I have not timed how long that takes. But I think 90 seconds is a good starting point. So when you are paying attention, because you all practice mindfulness perfectly, right? Every day. And even when you're sitting on your meditation cushion and you're releasing and letting go of all the things you are carrying, you know, of course, different sensations will arise. And if we can allow them to simply be, this very interesting thing happens, is we become that pond of water where these little pebbles are being dropped in, and there's the ripples, and we're watching them, but we are resting our attention in the water itself. And again, we do this is so important, we do this through compassion. Because people receive this teaching, and sometimes what they do is they take it and then they shut down. Because it's much easier to control a little area. But I want to challenge you to allow your subtle body to support you. So feel the watery nature of your subtle body as this vast pond. And as these different feelings arise, different sensations, different emotions, recognize that they're just these little pebbles being dropped in. Now, if we go to the surface and we can get really angry at all the pebbles because they're creating all the ripples, and we can turn it into a whole splashing fight where we try to grab the pebble and throw it back. That doesn't work, because what goes up comes down. It just creates more. But allow yourself to move into this spaciousness where there is room for your awareness to just be absorbing all of these pebbles and letting them just fall right through, so you're not holding on to them. And then there's the spaciousness to allow the ripples from those pebbles to simply run out of energy. And you'll feel it move through your subtle body. It feels weird. I won't lie. And what you'll notice as you start to practice in this way is occasionally, maybe more than occasionally, there will be bumps that you hit. So an emotion arises and you're like, okay, I'm just going to rest in equanimity and allow it to, do its thing, and just watch how it unfolds. Let the ripples go where they may. And then you'll be like, oh, no, wait, not there. And you'll find yourself trying to wrangle those ripples and direct them in another direction. And what happens, if we're in the pond and the ripples are going out, and then all of a sudden you stick your arm out and you're trying to push the ripples in a different direction, now you've got all these other ripples this way. And now you've got this little clash happening. So it gives you even more sensation, more feelings to deal with. And when that happens, again, be compassionate with yourself. Be compassionate with everyone around you. and return to that sincere wish. I wish for you to be free. I wish for you to recognize your Buddha nature. And that sincere wish opens up the spaciousness again, where you recognize that, oh, all this stuff can be happening, but I don't need to control it all. Sensations will come and then they will fall away. Now, this doesn't mean that we become stationary, that suddenly we don't move. That's just another way of sneaking into our little bubble, right? Say, oh, well, if I move, then, I'm going to lose my equanimity. So that's part of the practice, is learning how to do this while being in motion, while being observant about what is needed out of compassion. This is why we ground in that compassion. Oh, I wish for myself to be free, and I wish for all other beings to be free. And that becomes the guiding principle for any action that we do take. So instead of just reacting to the ripples and the pebbles that are falling in our pond, instead of trying to control the pond, we flip the question to, how can I be of service in this moment? How can I be of service to myself? How can I be of service to this entire world and everyone I'm encountering? And I want to point out that being of service to oneself is not selfish. We have this weird storyline that's been drilled into people, and it's very manipulative. And I think women get hit with it a little harder, but men get hit with it too. That you're not supposed to do anything at all for yourself if you're spiritual. And that is the biggest lie. And it's very logical why not. Because if you do not take care of your own being, your own body, your own mind, your own needs, whatever they may be, and only you know what your true needs are, then how can you possibly be of service to anyone else? What can happen is, and I've seen it happen, is people will just give and give and give and give and give everything they have to others until they literally have nothing left. And then they can no longer take care of themselves. And now what? Now they have to have somebody else come in and lift them up and take care of them. So now they become a burden. So it makes much more sense to take care of your own needs, whatever they may be, and then do such a good job at that you have extra. And then whatever is extra, then you give that away. Then you can truly be of service, and there's no strings attached. I'll tell you a story from a long time ago. I met this guy. I was into the Grateful Dead. It was a long time ago. And he was into the Grateful Dead. And he came into some money. And so he started following the Grateful Dead on tour, and he had tons of money. It wasn't really that much money, but it felt like a lot of money to him. So he went and he paid for hotel rooms and collected an enormous amount of people who would all crash in the hotel rooms, and they would travel around. And then they got to San Francisco and the money ran out. And in his innocence, he assumed somebody else would just start picking up the tab. But no. All the people that he had collected, because he was paying for them all, just scattered. And then now he was broke completely. And now not only was he broke, now he was bitter. Because he was not giving selflessly. He was giving with an expectation of return. Like, oh, I'm going to pay for you, and then you can pay for me. That's not selfless giving. That's a business arrangement. And if not all parties are involved in the planning of this business arrangement, it never goes well. And so he learned a very tough lesson. And like I said, it made somebody who started off with this very innocent, sweet ideal into somebody who was very, very bitter and very sad. So I tell you this story not to bum you out, but to remind you to look at how you are treating yourself. Be honest about what you need to function at your highest level. And then do such a good job at taking care of yourself that you have extra energy, extra money, extra time. And then help others. And then when you offer that help, when you give that help, there's no expectation. There's nothing you need or want in return, because this is truly a gift. And we do this with our body, with our mind, and with our subtle body, with our energy. And our feelings, these sensations and emotions that arise, are what tells us when we're pushing too far in one direction or the other. If we are over-giving and ignoring ourselves, there will be messages of resentment. Might be very soft. Might be displaced anger. Might start to creep in. There might be, extra fatigue. So pay attention to those little signals and say, well, what am I not giving myself? What do I need to do to restore my own equilibrium? And then when we are too hunkered down in our own little bubble, there's also signs. There's feelings of loneliness, of disconnection, of greed. You start to feel like you've got to hoard everything. That's often a sign that you have enough, but you're not giving out anything. And it gets tricky because you have to look at the different elements in your life. Because it could very well be like, okay, I don't have enough money right now, but I've got a lot of energy. So how have I been hoarding my energy? And then you figure out how to give that. So play with these ideas, play with that, but most importantly, pay attention to the rising and falling of sensation, of feelings, of emotions, with compassion. And use all of that information on the path. They're teachers. So So even when a stray emotion hits you, holding, just resting with it for that 90 seconds teaches patience. It teaches transience. And it can teach you, if you do start to hold, it teaches you where your attachments are. So on this path of Trikaya Buddhism, we use everything as part of the path. Even our emotions, even our sensations, all of the different feelings that are arising and falling away. And we pay attention not just to our physical body, not just to our mental projections, but also our energy field. Does that make sense? As we go back. Okay. Let's do some meditation. Let's see. Sit up nice and straight. And I'm going to play some zazen music. So we'll do 3 songs. We'll start on the navel center, then on the heart, and then for the last song, move up to the third eye.